give me one shot here on a blue chip stock, believe me, Kevin, the only problem you're gonna have is that you didn't buy more.
Nobody knows if the stock is gonna go up, down, sideways, or in circles.
Hey, what's going on, NBA draft fans? Your boys are back. The Wolves of Ball Street, your favorite draft analyst. It's the NBA Draft Show on the No Ceilings NBA podcast feed. My name is Corey Tulliver, and I'm here, joined once again by Albert Garbage Time. Gim, Albert, what's going on, brother?
Lots going on, man. It is Kith night at MSG. Cool stuff. Also, the sun went into retirement as it is daylight savings again. Or no, It's not daylight. It's gone now, which sucks. I got out of the office today and I couldn't see my feet in front of me not because I'm fat, but because it was dark. And it's sad, man. And I missed the sun, but I'm here. I'm ready to talk about the draft and all the fun cues we got on, Twitter, and we have some A's and we're going to do our best is why I'm here. And I'm excited, dude.
It is, it's going to be fun. These are always some of my favorite shows. And you always say it's fun to stray away from the normal kind of format that our show usually does, which is, breaking down one or two or three prospects in very film oriented fashion. This gives us a little bit more of a free flowing conversation and allows us to kind of dive into conversations in ways that we don't normally get to go into. So I'm excited about it. And we got some really good questions from, all the people on Twitter. If you are going to, join us in the chat and you have a, question for yourself, ask it in the chat and we'll do our best to get to it in the comments. So we're very excited to do the show. And Albert showing his dedication because it's Wemby night at the Garden. My buddy's there right now. Seems like some scene. So again, showing dedication to your craft by missing out on Wemby night at MSG.
We're here for it. We're excited. Slender Man can wait. I've got Q's to A, and I'm excited, dude. I'm ready to rock.
All right, so let's get it started. All right, so let's see. First question for us to dive into is going to be by Joey Barrett at Joey Barrett _ what player has the biggest range of outcomes in this draft?
So for this one, this was actually tricky. I had a couple names here, and initially I had some. So I'll start from the top. Initially, I had Matas Buzelis here, but then I thought about it. I was like, no, this is wrong. I actually don't think his range of outcomes is that crazy. I think when we did his pod, we talked about how we think he's going to be a really solid role player-ish type of guy. We don't really see a superstar type of ceiling for him. So that range isn't that wild. It's either he's going to be a really good role guy or a maybe not as really good role guy, which is my expert analysis here. Good job, Albert. So let me give you a different group of names. We have a guy that we did a pod on. Actually, two of the guys. No, three. Okay, look at me. All three guys that I have on my list are guys that we did pods on because I genuinely think there is a wide range for all three. My three guys are Kwame Evans Jr. from the Oregon Ducks, Riley Kugel, University of Florida, and AJ Johnson of the Illawarra Hawks. Now, I chose these three names, Corey, just because you and I believe, and all of us at No Ceilings, I think we try to be optimists. We are glass half full type of guys. And when we do our pods and we do our breakdowns of these players, we try to highlight the good and we try to highlight the optimistic aspects of their game, the flashes that they have. My only thing with these three guys is beyond the things that we talked about that we liked about them, there are some warts to their games. There are some negative aspects of their games that they're going to have to work on. They're going to have to figure out, and and applies to all three guys. When we talk about Kugel, we talked a little bit about the decision making type of stuff with him. We want to see him continue to work on his outside shooting. We like the finishing inside, but overall, there are like little things here and there where it may sway his eventual outcome. Same thing with Kwame Evans Jr., a guy with tons of skills and talents that, if it all comes together and, if the pieces come together, then the puzzle could be quite beautiful. AJ Johnson, same thing. So those are my three guys, Corey. I think these are guys that may, and eventually when we get closer and closer to the draft, they might actually be really divisive names as well. Like, I think some people are going to love these guys and some people might be really out on them. So of the three, I would say I think Kugel's the safest, but yeah, I think all of them have a little bit of a range to their outcomes.
Yeah, I think that's a really great list. I agree. I think, Kugel's already kind of shown like, all right, I'm ready to rock this year, right? Like, they played Loyola Maryland. So it's still early to really get like a fully formed opinion on these guys, right? Because it's like outside of like Jacoby Walters, who played
possessed,
Auburn, he was filthy, that was like a real game. A lot of these guys are not playing the kind of level of competition that, you're like, let me, form my opinion that I'm going to have 3 months from now. There's not a ton to be learned other than like, all right, these guys are putting in the work. I think AJ Johnson is a great name because as we've seen in the NBL with a lot of these really raw guys who aren't necessarily super developed physically, if you're not, it might take a while.
Yep.
And AJ Johnson, I think even in his limited film, like, even you could pick stuff out when he plays 6 minutes where you're like, all right, that's some pretty high level stuff. And it's like, how do you build on that and make those 6 minutes 12 minutes and then those 12 minutes 18 and 18 25? That's where we want to see him go towards the end of the year. And I think because he has that kind of like, it's just so natural the way he moves and like he just looks like he is a basketball player. And I think like you could be like, hey, I'm all in on this guy. He's in a tough situation, playing in a pro league. I'm not going to buy into the lack of production nearly as much as I would if he was like playing in college and didn't have a ton of production, right? Like there's going to be projection with him. So there are going to be some people, I think they're going to have him in the lottery for the majority of the season. And then there are going to be some people who are like, this dude's not producing. He's not that good. He needs way more time. I'm going to have him, in my second round or as an undrafted guy. So I think his name is really, really interesting. And that's a great call. The first guy who kind of came to mind for me was DJ Wagner.
Yeah, that's a good one.
And because he's a name that everybody knows. So he's coming into the year, I think, with still a lot of height, a lot of people who are going to be high on him and like, all right, he's like a strong kid who can make tough shots and he's like really bursty and he can get into the paint. And then I think it's going to be the type of thing where a lot of scouts are going to actually watch him play at the college level and see how he's fitting in when he's not necessarily the guy all the time. And he's got to be more of a distributor and how he adjusts to that. And I think he might be a guy that we look at and people go, I don't know, like he's kind of a short guard and like he's a scoring guard. He's not super versatile. Can you play him off the ball? Like, do I want to spend a first round pick on this guy? So I think he's going to be an interesting player to monitor just because I think I know you and I saw him, in person at the Hoop Summit. And I saw him, he's a local, tri-state area kid. So I got to see him, at other events too. And I think there are real questions about him. So he was the first guy that came to mind where I was like, I think some people are going to be super high on him. and buy into like him being this lead scoring guard, and then there are going to be some people totally out and be like, yeah, I mean, I don't think the efficiency is going to be there, and you know, stuff like that.
Corey, I'm with you. I think, I mean, to be honest, like, is his game like that crazy different from his dad's even? You know, obviously, I think his dad was a little bit more nuanced with his offensive game, and he had some really nice, savvy stuff to him. But I don't know, like with Wagner, it's I get it. I think it's a great name that you threw in there, 100%. And I feel like it's gonna be a real wait and see. I don't know. I it's a great choice. He's going to be super divisive. And if I can, Corey, really quickly, just the points that you made about AJ Johnson, it's so accurate because I'm actually working on a piece right now with Alex Tuhey, and some of the insight that he gave me was that even for him, like he's really had to adjust to the speed and physicality of the NBL that he was so aware of that he was going to have to prepare for it, but it was still an adjustment for him, even though he knew it was coming. And, you know, Tuhey has, in my opinion, a better frame than AJ Johnson. And I think he's already stronger than him. And so the fact that Tuhey has had to really adjust and, you know, get used to it. And he's a guy that's played in NBL 1 before as a 16, 17, 18-year-old. And the fact that he's adjusting, it makes sense that AJ Johnson is adjusting as well.
Yeah. Agreed. And I think it's a really good insight. And, you know, the physicality and the strength thing too. You know, I just saw the Knicks play the Clippers at James Harden's debut. And I was like 8 rows from the court, sick bread. And the thing that I noticed the most, where I was like, oh, these dudes are strong. These dudes are physical. And like, if you are going to be an NBA defender, because I think that's really the area of the game where like the strength, obviously like finishing, stuff like that. But like the physicality you need to be able to play with as a defender in this league is crazy. So like a dude like AJ Johnson right now, who's having that struggle in the NBL, like obviously he's super far away. So it's like, you got to be patient with him, because even if he shows the flashes in the NBL, it's going to be a whole new level, you know, when he jumps up to the NBA, and then he's going to be a project there too. So it's just like, is he a first draft guy, or is he like a guy who like you're going to be maybe getting a really good player on his second contract, second team potentially? That's kind of the question that you have with him, but the skills are clearly there, you know, for a kid like that. All right. Next question from the YouTube comments. We have Lockdown Scout, top 5 point of attack defenders outside the top 10. Okay.
Okay.
Let's get after it. Outside the top 10. Well, you know, we haven't done our draft rankings yet, which are, you know, coming soon, because the No Ceilings Big Board version 1 will be out on Friday, and then from there, you know, we'll figure out the rest of the rankings. But, you know, we'll kind of go outside the box a little bit and just kind of freestyle. First guy that comes to mind, Omaha, Bill U. You know, I think some people might have him around the 10 range, but it also, like, I think ESPN just had him like in the late 40s, maybe. So obviously, like, his range is crazy. But I think from a wing perspective, I think his perimeter defense is really, really fun. Scotty Middleton. I think Scotty is another guy from the wing who's just a really, really, really solid point of attack defender. On the ball, Garway Dual is, I think, probably, like, as far as one and done guys, I think he's probably cream of the crop for, like, you know, 6'4", long arms, insanely fast hands. When we were watching the practices at the Nike Hoop Summit, like, he was like putting people, just terrorizing them. Like, and even when they got by him, he was doing the like poke away thing, like, just super, super, super fun. Kevin McCullough from Kansas is like, he might be the best defender in college basketball from the wing spot, just because he's so seasoned. He's strong, crafty, so smart. Kobe Johnson is, I think, an interesting guy from the wing, from USC. Those are some of the names that have. Chase Ross too. Chase Ross, I think, for me, point of attack from like the point guard, shooting guard type archetype. Those are some guys who come to mind for me.
I think for me, Corey, the first name that came to mind for me was Kobe Johnson. We did a pod on him. I think he's going to be unbelievable. A sleeper name, kind of a sleeper name, because I don't know if we're going to see a lot of it this year, but maybe in next year, whatever. I think when his frame fills out, I think he's going to be a terror because of his length and his pokey hands, which sounds weird. Cameron Carr, Tennessee, a guy that we talked about. I can see it, man. Like his body's just not where it needs to be, but it will get there. And when he does, I think he's going to be unbelievable. And a guy, obviously, I keep talking about him because, he's a friend of the program, but when I talk to him, all he cares about is being versatile on the defensive end of the floor, which is Alex Tui, of the Sydney Kings right now. Like I'm talking to him right now for this piece, and all he's telling me is like, dude, he's telling me straight up, like I'm going to be able to guard 1 to 5. Like I'm going to show that to the world.
Let's talk about Tui a little bit.
Sure.
Because we really like Tui a lot. He's a guy that, we got to, again, watch up close at the Hoop Summit, and he just looks like the consummate role player. And I think we were all like a little like, is this kid, because we thought he was going to Gonzaga at the time, and like we were kind of like, is he going to be a guy who is a this year guy? Is he a multi-year college player? Like what's up? And then he's looked really, really good in the NBL. So talk about Tui a little bit, since you've been doing, a little bit of behind the scenes stuff and doing some work with him.
No, for sure. I mean, with Alex, he's a guy that I was able to do a home and away pod with last year after the Hoop Summit, and I've stayed in contact with him. And he's a guy that, when he made the decision to go to Sydney, the one thing that he wanted to make very clear to me was that it wasn't an easy decision. Something that he emphasized multiple times was there was nothing wrong with Gonzaga. He loved the coaching staff there. He loved the setting. He loved everything. But the reason why he stayed and he ended up, choosing to go to Sydney was because he said it was as simple as, I wanted to be a pro. I wanted to play pro ball. I wanted that experience under my belt, so that when I got to the NBA, he felt like it would have been, he would be a little bit more prepared for the NBA level of competition. And the main thing that he's been working on is shooting off the dribble, being consistent with his outside shooting, tightening his ball handling, and staying really consistent on the defensive end of the ball. And without me giving away too much of the piece that I'm going to be writing, some of the names that I want to bring up, right, that he's been really focusing in on, really been trying to model his game after. Jason Tatum, Mikal Bridges, and Klay Thompson are the 3 names that he gave me. And he said, these are the guys that he's working on, that he's watching every day. And Corey, the point that you made about strength, right? A guy like Jason Tatum, the type of, I don't know if people generally think of Tatum and strength, but strength is a huge part of Jason Tatum's game. The type of creation, the self-creation that he can create, the space that he can create with not only his footwork and the ball handling and his size, but that strength that he has is a huge thing. And that's something that Tui spoke on as well. And so Alex Tui is a really, really interesting prospect. And I'm really excited to finish this piece for the world to read, because he's a guy that he can come off as like a little, under the radar, not like a super loud personality or anything like that. But I think he's going to be an incredible pro, because he understands the direction that the NBA is going in. And that's something we talked about as well. He understands the value of versatility. He understands the value of outside shooting. And these are aspects of his game that he's confident in. He believes that he's going to be a versatile offensive and defensive player from day one. So a guy that I'm super high on. I have him pretty high on my board as well. And I think he's going to be a really, really fun guy to watch throughout the season.
Yeah, I agree. He's his shot looks so good now too. Yeah. It looks like he's made a ton of progress on that jumper from the time that we saw him in April to now. Right. He's shooting it confidently. And he plays a really valuable position. All right. So Lockdown Scout also said, I think Omaha has some OG Anunoby in him. We agree. When we covered him for this show. I believe we made mention of that's the type of player we think he can develop into. And then he also asked, Garway barely played in the first game. What's up with that? He left with an injury. So that's why he didn't play that many minutes. All right, let's go back to the Twitter questions. And next question is by NBA Draft Future. OKC looks like they will have 2 picks in the early/middle of the draft. Who are some names that you would like to add to this roster?
Corey, you can go first if you want.
Man, OKC is it's the team. It's like, what do you give the team that has everything?
Corey, I think the point that you just made is so important, though. Like, it's hard for me to believe that this is what the roster is going to look like at the end of the season.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, look, even if it is all right. So here's a guy that I think is interesting. I think they need bigs.
Okay, same.
Right, like because guards. They're just absolutely loaded.
Yeah.
You know, Kaysen is a guy who you're gonna have to get on the floor for 20 plus minutes a night. You know, by the end of this year, and like, you know, who knows how many minutes he's going to be able to play going forward. They're using him like as a screener and doing all these really interesting things, and he can guard so many positions because again, he has that positional strength defensively to go along with like the length, and he can play off ball offensively. Obviously, Shea is going to play 35 minutes a night. So I then they have Jalen, friend of the program. You know, they have Giddey, like they have all these perimeter guys. I think Ethan Almanza is an interesting guy for this roster because I think that he fits the type of way that they like to play, which is like quick decision making, you know, kind of versatile on both ends, you know, probably going to be switchable, high feel type stuff. I think Almanza is a guy that they could probably like in that portion. And I think he fits really well with Chet because he likes to operate close to the basket, and Chet's a guy who you can play and space out on the floor. And then Almanza, I think has a frame that is going to fill out more, and he'll be able to bang with kind of some of the stronger guys. There's a little bit of overlap with him and Jalen Williams, big Jalen Williams on the team. But I think he's interesting, especially if he shoots it. Right. Yeah. Like if he continues to prove that he might be a shooter. So he's an interesting guy that I think at that part of the draft. I also think they need some more like just perimeter shooters, like guys who could play off the ball, aren't going to need a lot and just like space the floor for your Josh Giddeys, right? For your Shays. So, I mean, is a guy like Scotty Middleton who still has that kind of size that you could play up or down or whatever and doesn't really ever need the ball to score, but can do it in spurts. He's a guy that I think is kind of interesting for them too. Yeah, so some guys like that. Maybe Kyle Filipowski could be pretty intriguing to me as well. So, you know, I think those are the kind of guys for me.
I think those are great names. Just really quickly, Corey, for our preseason draft guide for Almanza, I wrote his thing, and the 3 players that I compared him to are weird names. I did Carlos Boozer, Wendell Carter Jr., and Othello Harrington. So that's where I'm at. But okay, if I can explain myself, because people are going to be like, all right, first off, who the hell is Othello Harrington for our younger viewers? But I chose Othello Harrington because I just have such a strong memory of whether it was he was on the Bulls or the Knicks or otherwise, just being such a solid inside scorer, like a guy who had such a rock solid post up game, and he had
little lefty baby hooks.
Exactly, dude. So nuanced, and that that's the type of stuff that honestly we don't see a lot of in the NBA anymore. But Almanza, I think, is a really interesting prospect, like a guy who can really finish inside. Like he's a guy that like when you tell him to roll, he rolls freaking hard. Like he is running at the rim, ready to, damage people and damage the rim and sometimes even damage himself. So he's got to calm down a little bit. But I like him a lot. And I think he's a great, interesting prospect, a guy that you could see playing next to a Chet, offering something a little bit different as a big next to Chet. But I think is a great guy. There's a couple of names that I had. Dembona, I think, could be interesting. Just as a big defender, super mobile. I could see him being, playing with these OKC guys, obviously as a rim roller threat. But just what he brings on the defensive side with the way that he can move is so terrifying and would be so just like him and Chet defending the rim and doing just defense stuff is so fun and so scary. So I put his name there. Deron Holmes, obviously an interesting name. But the one that I wanted to throw in for me is Zach Edey. I want to see the Canada connection with Zach Edey and Shai Gilgeous. These guys played together in the summer. Zach Edey is a gigantic human being. And you put Edey next to Chet.
To put it lightly.
Yeah, to put it lightly, right? You can get some really like fun social things going on with Chet and Edey on the floor together. I think it'd be a lot of fun. And then obviously Cody Williams, he can go there, be with his brother, and just ride the bench for a couple of years, do G League stuff, and work on his game, and then come back later on and be a guy for them. I don't know. But yeah, those are the names that I wrote down. I really like the Bona and Edey ones, but I think your Almanza call is awesome too.
Yeah, I think Edey's the kind of guy that I think if a team takes him in the first round, it would be like pick 28, 29, something like that, right?
Yeah.
Unless he, shows some new wrinkles to his game this year where he's like jacking threes at volume. But I typically think he's pretty underrated as like a pro prospect. I saw him live the Jaden Ivey year, and I was like, holy shit. This dude is so gigantic. He moved so fluidly.
Yeah.
Like in person, he just looked like he moved so fluently. He's insanely productive. So yeah, like you might not be able to play him 30 minutes a night because he'll get pick and rolled to death or whatever, but the dude produces when he's on the floor, and like whatever team drafts him is like going to get a pro.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so him in OKC would definitely be interesting just to give them a different look, even if it's for like 15 minutes a night. Like that would be a fun like wrinkle to their roster construction, because they really don't have anything like him.
They having a giant doesn't hurt, and having a giant that can move like Edey does is great. And to Edey's credit, he's really worked on his body too. Like if you go back even to the Ivy year till now, I feel like he just continues to improve his physique. So I agree with you, Corey. I think he'd be a really fun wrinkle and a fun option for them.
Yeah, I'm gonna go to see Purdue this year as well, just so I can get see if he had anything to his bag, and really just to see a physical freak again. All right, let's take a question from YouTube. We got King Day 26. Do you think Alex Sarr has the potential to be mentioned with names like Evan Mobley and Chet Holmgren when it comes to defense only?
For me, I think I like him overall as a prospect in that area. Like I have Sarr as number 1 on my board right now. Like I think he is obviously I don't think he's exactly at the level as a Chet or a Victor or whatever, but he's a 7-footer that can do wild things. And he showed it during these, what do you call these friendlies? No, that's soccer.
Yeah, right. Showcase.
Okay, that's a good one. That's more basketball-y. But no, Sarr was unbelievable in these showcase games in Vegas. Or actually, no, it's not Vegas. It's Henderson. Right? Henderson,
Nevada.
Yeah, I was there last year to see Wemby. I still can't believe it. But no, Sarr was unbelievable there. He's been great in the NBL. A guy that, Corey, when we did his pod, we were kind of just foaming at the mouth, and we were so impressed with him. And we want to see it obviously throughout, the whole course of the season. But I think, in my opinion, he's at number 1 because he's got real superstar potential. So whether it's offense or defense, I think he can get up there. I love him.
Yeah, I don't think he's on Chet's level as a prospect.
Yeah, agree.
I'll say that. Like Chet Holmgren right now is like one of the most productive.
He's so good
players in the NBA. I don't know, like he's shooting 50, 90 right now. Like his efficiency is insane. Defensively, he's been like everything as advertised. And like right now, to me, like pretty clear rookie of the year. Wemby's been great and everything, but like Chet's numbers are just bonkers right now. Whether he can keep that up, we'll see. And also, he's a rookie, but it's his second year. So, we've seen that before. Ben Simmons, I think, right? Blake Griffin, right? Like, we've seen guys like this. Donovan Mitchell had that whole campaign against Ben Simmons, I believe, like he's a real rookie. He's not a real rookie. I am. So Chet has that advantage, but like Chet's been unbelievable. I think as a prospect, Chet's like one of the best prospects we've had in quite a while.
Yep.
Mobley, defensively, I don't know. Maybe, I think he might be able to get there. Mobley, I think it moves a little bit more consistently. Like, I think Sarr has these flashes where you're like, oh my God, like what on earth did I just watch? Like, that was insane defensively. But I think Mobley is just very consistent on that end as an impact player, which I think Sarr still has to kind of find his footing in that regard.
Right.
But I think that Sarr has more offensive potential than Mobley, because Mobley is just not wired to be like a scorer.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's ultimately like, he'll always be a super impactful guy who plays on winning teams, but he's never going to be able to drive your team's success.
Yeah.
That's just how I feel about Mobley. I think that's kind of how we felt about him in the draft. Like, that's kind of the questions. It's like, that's why he didn't go first overall. That's why he didn't go second overall. It's because he just isn't driven to like go dominate, and like, unfortunately, that's not really something most players develop. Right. Like, that's a mentality thing that you either got that dog in you or you don't. Right. And I don't know if he does. I think Sarr has more offensive force.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's taken a ton of threes. Like, he's not hesitant to let it fly. He's experimenting with things. He's got that turnaround fadeaway in the mid range. Like, he can rim run. Like, he's just got more avenues, I think, to be more impactful on that end. Whether or not whatever team drafts him hones it all in and turns it into like an efficient part of his game or not. So that's where I think he's probably like on that level of like an Evan Mobley, just because, they're not exactly the same, but there are similarities. But I think Chet's on a whole different level.
For sure. No, I agree, Corey. The Mobley piece is, we saw it in the playoffs last year. The Knicks really kind of took it to him and he really struggled. But with Mobley, it's, he's still we still love Mobley. Like, don't take what Corey said the wrong way. Like, both of us love him so much. He's got a lot of great aspects to his game, but that mentality piece that Corey brought up, it's, you either have it or you don't. I agree with that 100%.
Yeah. So, but Sarr's been
awesome.
Real deal.
Yeah.
And again, we covered him, full film breakdown. My first film session of the year was on Alex Sarr. So full scouting video, film breakdown again of Alex Sarr, available on the No Ceilings YouTube as well. All right, let's go back to Twitter for another question. And we got at Field of Hoops is going to ask a little question about the Chicago Bulls. Which lottery pick best fits the Bulls' needs? For me, this is pretty easy. Stefan Castle for me. Stefan Castle, I think, right now, I think the Bulls team is going to look significantly different at this time next year. I don't know if a lot of the Bulls stars are going to be there necessarily this time next year. So like, I don't want to sit and talk about the roster construction from like who fits best with the team now, because I just don't think it ultimately will matter. But if we are talking about like, if I'm building a team, like Stefan Castle is very high on my list of A, he could fit with the team if it looked like this going forward, but B, you can also maybe build stuff around him. And I think offensive creation, with the plus size at 6'6", where he could be a point guard, he could be kind of a scoring threat, and then he could be, a guy who can defend multiple positions. He'll play with physicality. He can make plays for others. This is what a modern guard looks like, man. And like, I think this dude is just, he's not going to be super flashy always, but he's skilled, he's crafty. And I think he's going to be a guy who really is a slow burn where people are like, all right, this dude is crazy, crazy good. So I'm interested to see him for the Bulls. He's definitely at the top of the list just because I think he fits A, what they have now, and B, even without that going forward, he fits what the direction that the league is trending towards. Although they'll probably pick some 6'9" wing that can't really shoot and is just kind of athletic and switchable defensively, and will add to the list of Patrick Williams, Dalen Terry, Julian Phillips, and they'll form the worst shooting team of all time.
Well, Corey's the Bulls expert here, so I'll defer to him. But I was gonna say, I mean, if you guys end up with like a really high pick, you guys have your pick this year, right? That's why we're talking about this. Yeah. So
yeah.
I mean, for me, like, go grab Alexander Sarr and feel great about it is how I feel. Also, like, if the Bulls got either one of those other wings, like Justin Edwards, Ron Holland, Jacoby Walter, I think that's all really exciting stuff too. So
yeah, I think there's going to be options. That's kind of the fun of this draft. Like, because there is no consensus and everyone's going to have such different opinions on who is at the top. That is kind of the fun of the draft. And for a team like the Bulls, who ultimately, like, I mean, they might not need to trade anybody at the trade deadline to end up in the top 5. They might just be bad. So, because it doesn't seem like they enjoy playing together all that much. For a team like that, like, fit is not really a concern. Like, Kobe Walter looks like he rocks. Like, I don't care if Zach LaVine's there, DeMar DeRozan's there. Like, those guys are not. Both of them are not going to be in the long-term future of the Bulls. Like, if you believe that Jacoby Walter is the best player available, he's available. Like, you take Jacoby Walter. You take whoever. So I truly don't know what direction they'd like to go. Another guy who's kind of interesting, who looked really good in his first game, was Isaiah Collier.
Mm-hmm.
Another physical, strong guy. The shot looked pretty decent.
Mm-hmm.
So we liked him when we saw him live at the Hoop Summit. Obviously, highly ranked prospect, but he looks like he's going to be able to get into the paint at will.
I mean, yeah, Stephon Marbury, right? So
yeah.
That's
That's the comp that we went with, I believe.
Yeah.
All right. Let's find our next question. And it'll be by Nerd Runner.
Great name.
At Nerd Runner.
Great name.
It is a really good name. All right. So the question is, most intriguing fits in the lottery for the Trailblazers. Fits well with Shaedon, Scoot, Anthony. So far, I've liked Sarr. I believe that's supposed to say Holland, Edwards, Buzelis. Who else should I be watching for the Blazers?
Of the names that weren't mentioned there, Corey, your guy, Scotty Middleton. I think his name should be there. My guy, Alex Tuohy. 100% I think should be there. I actually can't find this guy's tweet, so I can't. And I know, yeah, but also the other names I had was I know he said Sarr, Edwards, Walter, yeah. So, but Scotty Middleton, I think his name should be there. Like, who do you guys want? Who would the Blazers want to put next to Scoot Henderson? Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's the mindset. And I think a guy like Scotty Middleton, with his scoring ability and what he's going to be able to offer on the defensive side of the ball as well, I think is a really interesting option. And it's kind of the same for all the guys that I wrote, right? Tuohy, Edwards, Walter, all those guys. I think we should also take a second to be like, hey, and we talked about it before, goddamn, Jacoby Walter was really good in that first game. And I think that first game has you kind of thinking like, holy shit, like what is this guy going to do throughout the course of the season? Another Baylor guard is just going to be awesome, and then will end up being really good in the league too. So, yeah. But the first name that I had written down here was Scotty Middleton.
I love the Middleton. Let's get some shooters, right? And he's a guy who's not going to need a ton of usage there. I like their wings. Tumani Kamara's looked really, really encouraging lately. I like Chris Murray long term. They have Jabari Walker. They have Ayton and Robert Williams. So Ayton, they have the center spot locked up. Robert Williams, another injury. I don't think you can really count on him. But I do think like their dream from this draft, fit wise, probably would be Sarr, right?
Yeah.
Because you can kind of let him space out while Ayton does his little mid range song and dance, right? I mean, Ayton's been really good.
Yeah.
Like the Blazers have been frisky since Scoot went down.
Shaedon's
been really good, man.
Ballin', dude.
Shaedon's been really good right now. I do have to say on the Scoot front.
Yeah.
Look, it's early.
Yeah.
Let's preface this.
Yeah.
Nobody should be doing victory laps.
Corey, can I say really quickly? We're the
Yeah.
two guys that had him 3, and we're not taking victory laps. We're saying everyone relax. He's going to be awesome.
Yeah. But at the same time, I also don't think we need to make excuses for Scoot. Like, I don't think the people who had Brandon Miller should be taking victory laps because we're a week and a half into the season.
Exactly.
And I also think that we could look at Scoot and be like, hey, he has been really terrible. And he has some real warts to his games.
True.
That he needs to fix. I think there's a nuance to it where we're like, yeah, let's not worry. It's like, well, we can worry a little bit.
That's good. I wasn't expecting you to go in that direction, but
we can worry a little bit. He's shooting like 5. He was shooting like 5% from 3. Like, do I think he's going to get better? Yeah, but I'm saying we could worry a little bit. But like, he'll figure out how to get into the paint, and he'll get to his mid range a little bit more. He'll get better defensively, but he's just not the athlete that Derrick Rose and Russell Westbrook and those guys were. So we have to be patient with him, but like, we also have to be realistic and be like, yeah, he's been terrible, really bad. But
we did have some concerns about his outside shot when we did his breakdown.
Yeah, and he struggled with a lot of efficiency and stuff and finishing in the G League. Like, there are a lot of concerns that I think he was just one of those guys that were billed where it's like, he's the guy and he looks the part and everything. And like, I think he's going to be really good, but like, also it might be in his best interest that we still kind of settle down the expectations and just let him develop into the player that he's going to develop into, whether that's a superstar or like just like an all-star level guy. Like, we'll be patient with that. And like, let's not put those crazy expectations on him. That's going to put pressure that he's probably willing and embracing, because he seems like he's got that personality, but also like, it'll be in his best interest for everybody to be realistic about what he needs to work on, I think.
Yeah. Corey, I think that's a great point. But also going back to the question, I think who they pick with that pick, I think it'll be really important to his development too. Like, I genuinely believe that the Blazers are going to have his development in mind, and they'll be looking for a guy to really run alongside him and be a guy that could support his game and honestly accentuate the good aspects of Scoot's game. So having, another a strong wing shooter, I think, and also maybe a wing shooter that can do a little bit with the ball in their hands, I think would definitely benefit Scoot, right? So that he's like, not the whole onus of playmaking and ball handling is on Scoot, right? Having another guy like a Jacoby Walter or Justin Edwards. I think guys like that who could do stuff with the ball in their hands, that would benefit Scoot a ton, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Next question is going to be from our friend Nathaniel Miller on Twitter @JournalistNate. Who are your favorite, not necessarily the best, prospects that have transferred up to a high major, but maybe 2 years away from going pro, a la Baylor Shireman? As Tyler Rucker says, sometimes it just takes time. This was a very in-depth, nuanced question. And I came up with a few guys. So the first guy that I came up with because he's a guy that was very popular on, like draft Twitter last year. He had gone viral, and
Oh yes.
he's a guy that, I think a lot of people kind of jumped the gun on, and he, I think, made a really strong decision on choosing where to play his college ball, and best to showcase his talents, and that's Grant Nelson.
Mm-hmm.
So he transferred from North Dakota State to Alabama, and I mean, he had a crazy strong opening first game. I think it was like 24-7. But like, again, these early games a lot of times are not necessarily against the best competition. So I'm eager to see him play in the SEC and what he looks like, against that competition, rather than, beating up on, some less talented teams, because he has a lot of really interesting skills, but I don't think he's necessarily proven that he's a guy that has to be a this year guy. Like, maybe he is. I'm sure that he's definitely going to test the waters again, like he did last year, right? But like, it wouldn't shock me if it was like, hey, we don't have a first round guarantee for you. You can go in the second. Maybe you could be on a 2-way, or you can go back to Alabama and continue to, work on your craft and also get that NIL bag. Like, I think the NIL thing is a game changer for a guy like him. So he was the first guy that kind of came to mind, just because, like, is he like a real deal productive player in the way that NBA teams want out of a big man right now, or is he an internet guy? And I think I need to see more.
I think that's fair, Corey. I was actually surprised that you went with Grant Nelson first. I thought it would be a different name, but then also, like, the name that I had in mind for you, I think he might actually just be really good this season and make the league. So maybe he's not a 2-year guy. Dalton, Tennessee.
Yeah. Well, that was the thing. Dalton's.
Yeah.
And
you
also
talk about him though, like,
well, yeah, I would love to talk about Dalton. Also, I think he's a grad transfer. Like, I don't know how much eligibility. Like, I don't even know if he has any eligibility left, after this year.
Right.
The COVID stuff definitely messed up how exactly I don't know anybody's eligibility off the top of my head. But Dalton's a baller, man. He's like 6'6", 6'7", with like a legit stroke, and like legit like NBA athleticism. Yeah. I remember last year I was cutting up tape from a prospect, and I was trying to find the defensive tape, and I was at the point where I was like, can't use any of this because this white dude is just absolutely destroying this prospect. I'm like, this is really frustrating. I can't use anything from this game. And I remember I texted Maxwell and I'm like, Dalton Connect ? And he's like, yes. I'm like, okay. Because Maxwell's a draft sicko. Yeah. Listen Mondays on the feed. And he got the Maxwell approval, but like he moves like an NBA guy. And I think he's going to be the number one guy at Tennessee this year. Mm-hmm. But big size,
real athleticism,
real athlete, like poster level stuff. Yeah. Can create his own shot. He's a real deal. I texted a prospect about him. I was like, yo, what do you think about Dalton? And he's like, I'm a little worried about the fit at Tennessee because you know how sometimes these guys go to Tennessee and they get put in a box. He's like, but that dude is legit. Like, he's a baller, man. Yeah. And it's funny. I think the prospect that I was texting, he gave me like a full on scouting report of him. I'm like, oh, do you want a job at? But yeah, I love Dalton, but he's league bound. Yeah. He's already popping up on boards. So even regardless of his age, like this dude,
Yeah.
he's going to be on a roster next year. So, but yeah, Grant Nelson, and then I had a couple other guys, Javion McCullum, who went from Siena to Oklahoma, and then Jameer Watkins is an interesting name. Was at VCU and has transferred to Florida State, and he's like an interesting guy, 6'7", like 220, like strong, physical wing. My questions with Watkins are like he's never been like super efficient, and like I think he's got to prove that he can be efficient. Like he's got to prove that he can knock his outside shot down. The shot I think looks good, but if he like can just shoot it at like 36, 37%,
yeah,
and just get his field goal percentage like 45%, which is really just like a diet of rims and three, I think he could be a really interesting kind of like late round prospect, because physically, like he's got what you want out of like kind of like a bench, 3-and-D type wing.
No, I'm with you. I mean, this is not my expertise. I'm not the draft sicko like Maxwell is, but I had a name and he's kind of different, where he was with a high major team and then things didn't really work out for him. And a guy that Corey, I've talked to you about a couple of times. We just haven't been able to do a pod yet, because also like we need more film of his. But Adama Ball, who was at Arizona and now he's at Santa Clara, and a guy that I think could be interesting. Now the shooting really has to connect, but he's another guy that I've been talking to recently. And his biggest thing with me is that he's like, dude, don't sleep on my game, was like his main messaging to me. Like, it's coming. He felt like I won't divulge too much what he said, but I think he's in a unique opportunity now with Santa Clara. And we've seen some really good players come out of that school in recent years. Jalen Williams, AirPods. So
Yeah.
I think it's going to be interesting to see what type of season he has. But once again, even with him, it may not be a 1-year thing. It may be a couple of years him playing there for him to actually reach his ceiling and, really get his name on boards and stuff. But a guy that I wanted to mention, because I've kind of liked his game for a while now. Obviously, Rucker, being a Arizona guy, has been talking about him for some time. But, I think it's an interesting move for him going to Santa Clara, and hopefully things work out. So,
yeah, I love it. I love you flip the question.
Yeah.
Give it a little twist.
Yeah.
I love that. All right. Back to Twitter. We have at second worst tweeter, another great Twitter handle. Any thoughts on KJ Simpson? Feels like he could be a sleeper this year. KJ Simpson from Colorado. I think that Colorado team's going to be really fun this year, with Cody Williams, with Tristan Silva, and KJ Simpson. I like Simpson. And here's the thing. He's like a smaller guard, right? He's like 6'1", 6'2", whatever. I buy the shot. I think the shot looks clean. I think that he's really got to shoot it this year. And his big thing is like, he cannot finish around the rim. Like he was like 46 or 47% in the half court last year. And if you're going to be a small guard who can't finish around the rim, like it's just not going to happen. Like you have to be efficient around the rim. You have to shoot it from three, and you got to be able to defend. I like his playmaking. I like him as a player. I just don't know if he's a guy that like a team is going to spend draft capital on.
For me, Corey, with Simpson, I mean, there's some shiftiness to his game, but I think the shooting point that you made is important too. He's never really shot it from outside at like a really good, consistent number. I want to reserve like ultimate final judgment, but a lot of his game feels like kind of like a G League guard to me. Maybe at best like a third, fourth guard on an NBA team. I think early on he's definitely going to be playing a good amount in the G League or maybe overseas. But he has kind of that feel to him. He is a smaller guard. He's not tiny by any means, but like even when you watch him on the floor, like it feels like a smaller guard. But the outside shot, Corey, I'm with you. Like I think it looks fine, but he's never really hit it at like a high mark. So we're going to have to see that for sure. He can shoot it from the mid range. Obviously, I think there's like nice shiftiness to him, but feels a little bit more like a guy whose path to the NBA might be a little bit longer than others is.
Yeah, he's like a good college player. He feels
Yes.
like right now. But
Good.
look, I mean, maybe he takes a leap this year.
Maybe.
Right? Maybe he takes a leap. Like that's the fun part. It's early on in the year, and we'll see. But I think he's got an uphill. I think he's got an uphill battle.
Yeah.
All right. Last question. From the YouTube comments. Me. I really don't know much about the 24 draft. Who do you guys think is the consensus number one pick? So you said a little earlier you have Alex Sarr, right? What's crazy is like I just don't even have a consensus number one guy. Like I have a guy. We're releasing the No Ceilings NBA Big Board version 1 on Friday. Right now, I have Justin Edwards at number 1. I just 6'8" wing who can play on or off the ball and can make shots and defend. Feels safe right now. Thought he had some really good moments, some inconsistent moments, but really good moments at Global Jam too. I think he's developing that on-ball creation stuff. And he's a lefty, and we have a bias towards lefties. But again, like Stefan Castle is a guy who I have at 2 right now, who I easily think could get to the top spot on my board. Jacoby Walter just had, probably the best defense of the best debut of, maybe any of the prospects outside of Alex Sarr. 28 points, knocked down crazy shots, like running off screens, creating his own offense, like getting into the mid-range, getting to the foul line, just like total package as a scorer. If he shows any playmaking flashes, I think he's a guy that could throw his hat in the ring. Alex Sarr, I think right now, if I had to bet on a favorite, I'd probably go with Sarr as a number 1 guy to go number 1. And then Ron Holland's going to be a guy who scouts and teams love because of the tenacity that he plays with. And, he's a wing. And if he shoots it at, even a decent level, I think he's going to be a guy who throws his hat in the ring too. So, and then who knows, maybe some other prospects emerge, right? Is there anybody that you think can emerge that we didn't name outside of that group?
Well, Corey, first off, I want to say the 5 guys that you mentioned are my top 5 guys as well. And I think those guys are pretty, like, at this point in the season, the really early stages of where we're at right now, I think those have to be the 5 guys, in my opinion. But right outside of that, I think, guys that deserve to be mentioned, Almanza, that we talked about earlier, Isaiah Collier, I think definitely needs to be
Collier
mentioned.
deserves to be mentioned with the top 5.
Yeah.
For sure.
Omaha, a guy that I think by the end of the season may really be able to move his way into the discussion. And Corey, this is something that you said when we did this pod, and I don't think it's crazy. I didn't think it was crazy when you said it, and I still don't think it's crazy now. If everything goes well and goes, the way that, like that 1% outcome, I just don't see why Riley Kugel can't be in that space. I'm not saying that he should go top 5, but if he has the type of season that people think he might be able to have for Florida, I think he's going to be in that discussion is what I feel. I'm not saying that it will happen, but obviously if that production comes and he puts all the pieces together, I don't see why not.
Let me throw a wild card guy, because I know some people have him this high up in the, maybe not the number 1 spot, but in the 5 range. What about, where are you at with Donovan Clingan? What does he have to do this year to really, kind of cement himself in that 5 to 10 range, possibly even like the 3 to 5 range? Is it possible for him?
Clingan's kind of a hard eval for me, dude. Like, the range in which people talk about him in, I don't feel comfortable. But I also don't dislike his game. So currently I have him like 16th.
Okay.
So I'm probably the lowest
fair.
out of anybody, at No Ceilings. I'm not sure. I'm kind of talking out of my ass here, but I don't know, man.
You have no problem, talking about guys you're lower on than everybody else.
But I still like him. Like, people are gonna take this the wrong way and be like, "Oh, you have 16, you like him? What an asshole!" But no, I actually genuinely like his game. But like the type of player that he is, like, I'm not sure, Corey. I'm not sure what exactly he needs to show me to change my mind. Even that, I'm not sure. It's like sometimes it's a gut thing with me, and it's hard to switch the gut thing with me, and I can be stubborn in that way. But I don't know. What do you think, Corey?
He's a tough eval for me too, man.
Yeah, dude, he's tough.
He's a tough eval. I think with Klingon, like, I cannot ignore his productivity.
Sure.
His advanced numbers, the impact he has when he was on the floor last year was tremendous. And I can't ignore it, right? And he helped, he was a part of a team that won the national title. Like, and he was a player on that team that helped win,
Right.
I still have to see what he looks like in a 28-minute per game role. I need to see if those numbers extrapolate out. Like, is he conditioned enough to keep that block rate up? Is he going to be able to keep up that efficiency on a higher volume of shots? Is he going to be willing to shoot threes? Because I think that would be something that makes him would make him more valuable in like a top 5 conversation if he could like stretch it out. Like if he was like Zach Edey-esque, but he could like legit shoot threes. I don't know. And there's like, so because he was so productive, his advanced stats are so good and he is impacting stuff. But at the same time, like, I don't love the way he moves.
Mm-hmm.
He covers a ton of ground, so he doesn't need to move a ton. But like, I do worry about him out on an island.
There's some clunkiness.
Like we were worried about a guy like Walker Kessler.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Walker Kessler is like probably a better mover out on the perimeter than Klingon is. Like Klingon's like heavier, you know what I mean? Like he's like a big boy. So like I'm worried about him a little bit in that regard, like from an NBA context. Like, can you pick and roll him to death? Like, or is he going to be a guy that you just put in a drop and like cover so much ground that he's going to be able to make an impact that way? And like the way that like Brook Lopez does, who's like not like a super fluid mover at this point of his career. Right. So he's probably I'd probably lean more towards that. But so he's hard.
No, Corey, I love every point that you made. No one can ignore, his production during that tournament run. A guy that was a huge part of UConn's success, 100%. The sample size has to be there. Outside shooting, we'll see. I don't know. But no, Corey, I think the most important thing that you brought up that I agree with, that is a big part of, my eval with him, is that there's some real clunkiness to his game. And it's hard for me to ignore. I think you and I both love really fluid guys. I don't know if he's super fluid. So, tough question. But, I have him at 16 right now.
Yeah. I just want to see him play. Like, he played 15 minutes in the debut game. He's coming back from a foot injury. You don't want to, have him out there and have him hurt himself or anything. But, like, he averaged 13 minutes per game last year. Like, I just want to see this dude play 30 minutes.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, he's a wait and see for me in that regard. Because, like, the eye test for me doesn't agree with the production and stats. So like it's weighing and trying to weigh both for me.
Yeah. And Corey, it's always dangerous to be like, hey, this guy was really good at the end of his freshman year and he's going to carry that into his sophomore season. As much as, growth and development can be linear, it usually isn't linear. And so I think a lot of people are betting on like, hey, look at what he did at the tail end of last season. Okay, he's just going to carry that into a larger sample size with more minutes, but it doesn't always work out that way. So I think he has to be a wait and see.
No. And also, I think there's like and I don't have any information to one way or the other, because it's not a question I was super interested in asking one way or the other, because I think he bowed out of the draft process pretty early. But like, I think there's like this narrative forming that like, oh, Klingon would have went, around the lottery last year if he came out. And like, are we sure?
Yeah, who told you that?
Like, do we know that for sure? Like, or so I don't know. But I like him and I love this UConn team. I can't wait to see them in person. because Caravan's, another interesting guy who I'm like, I kind of feel similarly to Klingon, where it's like his stats are sick and he's making an impact, and like he's doing stuff as a shooter that, is, you could say, is like pretty special from like a college perspective. And then I look at him sometimes and I'm like, this dude looks like the dude at LA Fitness who like is like 45 years old, and like you're just like, I don't want to play with that guy. And then you're on his team and you're like, oh, this dude could shoot it. Like, all right, like he knows how to, but it's also like, I don't know. They're a funky team, but I love a ton of the guys there. I think like for a guy like Klingon and a guy like Castle, like to have Caravan and Cam Spencer like spacing the floor, it's a really ideal scenario. I think they're going to be a fun team.
2024 Wally Zerbiak.
Okay.
There it is.
Shout out to Wally. Still got the same hairline.
Long Island's
Calling X
finest.
Games.
Yeah.
Long Island legend. All right. Albert, tell the people where they can find you and what you got cooking up.
You guys can find me at Alberto Gim on Twitter. You can find me at GTG NBA. I'm actually simultaneously working on 2 pieces right now because one of them is, and Corey, this is like kind of new for me. I've never been like a heavy research get quotes guy for my pieces. I've always just been like, let me just write whatever the hell I want and be really free about it. But as I mentioned, I'm writing a piece on Alex Tui. He's given me some quotes. He graciously answered a set of questions that I sent to him on a Google Doc. So he is the freaking best. And then I'm actually working on a sneakers piece as well, where I want to be writing about, where I'm trying to write about like on-court and off-court sneakers. I've been polling a lot of college and NBA guys, trying to find out what they like wearing, and write a little bit about that, because we love to draft, but we're kind of lifestyle guys too, some of us. So
hell yeah,
to kind of tap into that as well.
That's super rad. I can't wait to read that, because big sneaker guy. I feel like you got to be when you're from New York. It's like a big part of New York culture for us growing up.
Yeah, where are you from? Pennsylvania? Come on. No hate on Pennsylvania.
I don't know what I'm working on right now, because I've been working on a piece and that I was like kind of originally planning to put out before the season, and now that the season started, we'll see. Because the player I was going to write about, I think, had like 4 points in his first game, so
abort.
So we'll see. I might have to pull something out of the rabbit out of the hat last minute, but I'm excited to read your pieces for sure. And you can find all that at NoCeilingsNBA.com. And for those of you who are unaware, we launched No Ceilings Plus, and it's been going awesome so far. We've got like Rucker put up an NBA piece about young developmental prospects today. I released my Alex R film session there a couple of days early, exclusive to those guys. Maxwell did a More Stones Unturned plus piece. So these are exclusive pieces that are bonus content. So if you want more No Ceiling stuff, you could become a No Ceilings Plus member, and you become a member of the secret club that we got going on over there. So it's really cool. You're going to get access to our Discord, video calls with us, whole bunch of really cool stuff that we got in the works. So NoCeilingsNBA.com. You can follow me at Corey Teleba on Twitter, NBA Draft Dude on other stuff. Come find me, come hang, continue to ask questions. College season started, Albert. We're ready to rock.
We are.
We're in full force now. All right. Until next time, y'all. Rate, subscribe, like. We out. Peace.
Peace.